Okay. Our next speaker is Gabrielle Wong-Parodi. She's going to talk some about Speck sensor. So kind of following what we talked about before about monitoring air quality, but this will have a very different twist on some of the more evaluation and academic parts of looking at some of these tools. So can we get her slides up? There you go. So, Gabrielle, take it away.
Thank you. Oh, this is the advance button right there. Okay. So thank you for the introduction. I just want to let you all know a little bit about myself and the research that I do. I'm a behavioral decision scientist. And what I do is try to understand and investigate how people make decisions, and in doing so, identify strategies or interventions that can help them make more informed decisions about things they care about and things that they value. So I work across a wide range of domains. So I have worked with Climate Central to develop their Surging Seas Risk Navigator. I'm working right now with Baruch and some colleagues at Carnegie Mellon to develop a preterm birth app that helps women who are at risk for preterm birth reduce their exposure to things that could increase their risk. I'm working with a student on the Navajo Nation to develop an interactive energy development portfolio decision aid to help citizens feel empowered to go to their government and say, okay, this is what we want the portfolio of development to look like. And obviously I'm here, so one of the things that I do is also related to indoor air quality. And as we all know, in the 21st century, concerns about air quality are increasing. Is this working? Oh, wait a second. That is not the direction I want to go in. It seems to be going backwards. Okay. So as we are all aware, fine particles, especially those that are 2.5 microns or less, can I advance? Okay, can have detrimental health impacts. They can lodge deep into the lungs. They can also pass the air-blood barrier and result in a lot of health problems, such as cardiovascular disease, arrhythmia, and respiratory illnesses. I would like to advance the other way. Okay, thank you. All right, okay. And so one thing we could do is to focus on outdoor air quality. However, as we know, and perhaps we may be moving into an era where passing regulations to regulate the quality of our air might be difficult and time-consuming, one thing that we could do is to turn to indoor air quality. And there are multiple sources of indoor air pollutants, from smoking, which what we've talked about earlier today, to cooking, to vacuuming even, to simply just moving around the house, opening or shutting windows, kind of depending on what the outdoor air quality is, could affect your indoor air quality. So one thing that we could do is to see how we can arm people with information that ties their activities, their lifestyle, to their PM 2.5 levels. And perhaps armed with that information, people may feel empowered to make positive changes in their lives to reduce their exposure. Other way. Okay, and so the Speck sensor is one of the many indoor air quality monitors that are on the market today. And this was created at Carnegie Mellon by the Create Lab. It's that one, okay, thank you. By the Create Lab to provide continuous PM 2.5 readings to users on a web-based platform. So with this particular technology, people can bring it into their home, and it retails now for about $150, and it's about this big, and I would say it's probably half a pound, maybe a pound at most. And people can move it to different areas of their home to kind of see what their indoor air quality is and to do some home experimentation in order to identify hotspots and things like that. They can also share their data on that online platform, and the people who have designed and developed this technology also have a Facebook page where community members who are using this technology can talk to one another and talk about some of the approaches that they've taken to reduce their exposure. Okay, so basically, the aim of the Speck sensor is to improve people's air quality. It allows people to establish a baseline of what their indoor air quality is, to identify hot spots in their home, through experimentation, to investigate different sources, so that in a sense they become an air quality detective, and they are able to troubleshoot with family members and also members of their community. So I wanted to show you some of my colleagues' data, and this is for a couple of days in June of 2015. And so here you can see some of the spikes in the particulate matter, and that's on the y-axis, and on the x-axis we see time. And so what this allows the user to do is say, okay, well these are the readings that I'm getting, which are almost in real time. What's going on? What activities am I doing in the home that are correlated with some of the spikes that I'm seeing? So she took a look at some of the activities that she was doing, and a lot of them corresponded to cooking. So she was like, okay, well, what was I doing a little after 12 on that day? Okay, I was making a grilled cheese sandwich. Oh, wow, I see a spike here. Later in the day, a little after 6, I'm cooking dinner. I see another spike. The next day, I'm hungry. I love bacon, so I'm going to fry up some bacon. Wow, a really big spike. So what she was seeing was that her air quality was worse during cooking and meal times. So what the web-based platform allows and provides are some appropriate and plausible solutions that people can take in their own home, which allows them to control their risk. And so she went to the website and she said, okay, well, what can I do? And she said, I can turn off my microwave vent. I can maybe install a window exhaust fan, and I can open the basement door. So this is some of the experimentation she did to see how her exposure could be reduced. And she found that indeed when she did do these steps while she was cooking, the PM levels went down. So I just want to say a disclosure here. I don't have any skin in the game. So I did not develop or do any user testing or design of the Speck monitor. I was asked to come in and to evaluate whether or not using these types of monitors can help people learn about their risk and empower them to take steps to reduce their risk. So that was the question that was put to me. So can the can the Speck monitor empower citizens to take action to increase their air quality? I just also want to note we did this on a shoestring budget. So there are some things that we wanted to do that we weren't able to do. So our approach was to put the Speck monitor into public libraries around the Pittsburgh area. And the reason why we wanted to do this is we wanted to remove that barrier of cost. And we wanted this to be accessible to everybody. So we put this in 16 locations. We put about 2 to 4 specs depending on demand in the libraries across Pittsburgh. And we invited library patrons to check out the Speck monitor, to take it home for 4 weeks, and then to come back and tell us what happened. So what we had them do was take a pre-Speck use survey, which they could take on a dedicated computer that was right by the checkout desk, and then to come back 4 weeks later and do kind of the exit survey. So we had 62 people who were interested. They filled out the pre-survey. However, we could only get 25 people to come back and take the post-survey. So those are the results that I'm going to present today. And there are a couple of reasons why only 25 people came back. When we talked to people afterwards, one of the biggest reasons was that they like to return things after hours, and so they just simply stuck it in the drop box. And of course, there was no, well, I guess we could have put a computer outside the library, but that probably wouldn't have lasted very long. And the second reason was when we followed up with some people that 4 weeks is a long time. They frankly forgot that they had taken a survey. So I'm just going to go over briefly some demographics of the 25 people who completed both of the surveys. The average age of our participants was 45. 74% had a college degree or higher. 60% had an annual income of $51,000 or higher. About 40% have children under the age of 18 living at home. The majority have no adults over the age of 65 living at home. and 12% report having a respiratory illness. For those of you who are familiar with Pittsburgh, this is a map of the Pittsburgh area, and here you can see the libraries where we located the Speck monitor. And as I said before, we really wanted to target people from a variety of socioeconomic backgrounds. And so as you can see here, we really got a range of locations with varying demographics, which is what we were aiming for. So what did people learn? We found that using the Speck monitor increased their knowledge of indoor air quality. We also found that people were better able to identify health risks of indoor air pollution. We also found that people expressed higher perceived personal risk after using the Speck monitor. So a lot of research suggests that when you increase people's personal risk, it can make them more worried and more interested in doing something, but it could also make them feel paralyzed. Okay, well, you've scared the heck out of me. What can I do now? Which I think goes to one of the comments that was made by a questioner in the last session. But what we found was that after using the Speck monitor, people had greater confidence in their ability to take action if they found that their indoor air quality was poor. So we're seeing here that sense of self-efficacy seems to be elevated. However, I just want to go back to this slide to let you all know and to remind us here that people, their sense of personal risk, if you consider 3 to be kind of the midpoint, was pretty low. So although they felt empowered, they didn't actually feel on balance that their sense of, or that their personal risk was that high. So now I'm going to turn to some of the qualitative data that we have. When talking to people, we really wanted to not only kind of get a quantitative estimate of what they were doing, we also wanted to understand why they were doing and what they planned on doing. So when we talked to people about why they checked out the Speck, and I think that this echoes a lot of the findings that people had before, it was primarily because of health concerns. Health concerns for themselves, health concerns for their family, and particularly for their children. As one person said, well, we have a kid, so we wanted to check the levels in the house. We have a nephew who suffers terribly from, he's about 3, and it's either an asthma or an allergy, and he has just gotten on breathing treatments, and it's terrifying to watch him go through it. So, we were always kind of wondering. We wanted to know what discoveries people were making because the web-based platform encouraged people to experiment with the Speck monitor. One person said, again, this bacon thing, it was actually really surprising because we know we get that good aroma of bacon, and we thought that was a sense like the only thing, the smell of cooking, was the only thing being released. Another person said, we found, I don't know if you want to know about this or not, but through the Speck, we found that when we run the vacuum, there's a jump. So imagine that. In the sucking up of all that stuff, it leads to sending, dispersing it all throughout, whatever it happens to be on the carpet, things that have settled. And then we also wanted to know, okay, well, now that you're armed with this information, what are you going to do about it? And so one person said, so that was kind of the first time we had that aha moment. We were better about running like the ventilation system, the fan. We have one above the stove and one that exits out. We're better about doing that, brushing the dogs so they're not producing a lot of dander. Another person said, we try to change out our filters in our furnace and our air conditioner. Try to do that on a yearly basis. Yeah, so that's probably like the only thing that we actually go out of our way to do in terms of air, keeping the air clean. And then what we also found that was really interesting, and we didn't actually ask about, but people just unprompted provided this information to us. From what we've learned from our house, I've tried to tell my sister about my nephew. So this is that person who has a 3-year-old nephew who may have asthma or an allergy. These things, running the vacuum and cooking and things like that, even to offer, they light a fire pit outside, to even say, maybe you should get one of those like propane jobs. It's not as fun, but I feel like that would be cleaner than burning wood. And like I said, some of the wood I think they're burning isn't of the best quality anyway. But I've tried to. some of the things we have learned just by seeing them, would like to try to pass on. So our initial findings suggest that indoor air quality monitors like the Speck sensor can help people learn about the risk and help them take steps to reduce their exposure. But there are some caveats here, and this goes to the comment that I made earlier. The people who checked the Speck monitor out and who also moreover took the surveys are likely to be members of the public who are interested and affected, and who may not necessarily be the same individuals who could benefit most from knowing this type of information. So we need to do a better job of doing research to see how we can reach out to the populations we need to be reaching out to, and doing a better job of evaluating whether or not this type of information is indeed empowering them and helping them. There are some key things missing with respect to this study because it was a shoestring budget. So for example, we just have self-report. We have behavioral intent. We don't have an actual objective measure of what they did. And we also don't have this tied with other sort of biological markers that might be really interesting to know. We also weren't able to gain access to their data, so we don't actually know what their exposure levels were. Because what happens with the Speck sensor is that if they put all of their data kind of on the platform, we have no idea who put that data there. It's all anonymous. And it would have taken an enormous amount of time and effort for us to kind of jump through all the hoops to get the approval, and we basically, well, people who were designing the spec basically just wanted to know, okay, well, what's happening now? How are people using it now? So a more careful and complete study, I think, is warranted. So what people at the Crate Lab are doing right now is putting the Speck sensor in libraries across the country. It's a program where libraries can apply, and they get 3 free specs to put into their catalog. And if they would like more, they can purchase more. And the people who design the Speck sensor are interested in continuing an evaluation, so we are looking for funding to do that, which would be nice to kind of get a more representative sample of what's going on nationally. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. I'll take questions, I guess, or we might just have a panel. So, thanks.